All right, the recording is in progress. So, welcome to the Esoteric Lounge, where we discuss all things esoteric, strange, high strangeness, low strangeness, mystical, transpersonal, transrational, all of the things. This is we step into the mystic, so to speak. I am John. And with me right now is Joseph. Matt will be joining us a little bit later. But we were just discussing what wiggy things we're up to. And Joseph was telling me about a retreat. So what was this retreat now?
Well, the retreat is from an organization called HAI,
HAI.
H-A-I, and I don't even know what that means at this point. It is an acronym,
Oh,
and I can
okay.
look it
Well,
up,
I know
but
in Japanese it
HAI,
is
yes,
yes.
yes.
Um,
I've not even
so
thought about that. That could actually be why they called it HAI.
yes. Oh, okay. Matt, my co-creator of That So Quantum, looks like he is joining us. Oh, there he is. There's Matt. Ooh, you have a. All right, he is muted though.
Classic muted audio.
Classic muted Zoom world. So be patient with us, listener or viewer, while Matt sets up. So you are okay. So Joseph was telling us, just to let Matt know, about a retreat he's going to do from an organization with an acronym HAI, which we were talking about. Maybe that's Japanese for yes. Um, you know, but I mean, as a sort of a what is it when it's something that sounds the same? Is that's not a synonym? Antonym, homonym. I think homonyms are things that sound the same but are spelled differently.
You
So
would know about
maybe,
that.
so maybe by calling it hi, they're also saying hi, or hi, or just hi.
Probably
So
the
it
least first person to talk about this organization, even though I
that's fine.
don't
Even though
even
you
know the
signed
whole
up.
name.
Even though you signed up.
I know their
Okay, so
acronym.
another acronym. So okay, so hi, this organization that we're discussing, Matt, what mystical esoteric things we are up to or have been up to. So so you signed up for this. You have friends that have done this retreat.
Okay. How
Oh,
are
there he
you?
is. Yay, there you are. Ooh, look, you have a
No,
little
I
a
can't go.
tapestry in front behind you. I have a brown
Ah,
curtain.
now I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Wow, it works.
Yay! So welcome to the Esoteric Lounge podcast, Matt. So yeah, we're just kind of introducing ourselves, trying to figure out um what esoteric things we're up to before we delve into the topic today, which is just what makes us want to start this podcast. Anyway, or video cast or whatever, however you're hearing it. So Joseph, hi. A
Hi.
retreat. It's a treat for 10 days.
No, no, no.
Um,
Three
not 10
days.
days. Oh, 3 days. Oh, okay. 3 day retreat. Oh,
Yeah.
that's doable in most situations. And you're stepping into this situation and maybe doing some transpersonal work, psychological work, you
Yeah,
think?
honestly, I've been recommended by friends who took these other workshops I've done, and they said take them. And I like these people enough that I took them at face value, and I've really gone completely on faith.
No, that's fine. Yeah, you're just jumping into the thing,
I was telling you before when we were talking. Yeah, the only distinguishing thing I know is some sort of transpersonal work, not sexual, although we're allowed to not wear clothes optionally. And the
The
basis of that
natural
is
state.
this is our natural state. It's
Nice.
optional.
So I suppose if in the natural state, if you become aroused by someone else's natural state, that will also be natural.
I suppose so. I hope this
Hope,
doesn't happen.
hopefully, you just kind of doing on whatever work you're doing and just not paying attention to that.
I'm told most of these people are averaging in their late 50s to mid 60s or even 70s. So hopefully
So
that doesn't happen.
right, you're a 70-year-old nudist walking around dealing with shadow work. Um, so Cool. Well, I wish you luck. And that starts around your birthday. You're gonna be gone for your birthday for that.
My birthday's mid next week, and it starts on Friday of this following week. Yeah.
Okay, nice. All right. Well, we'll be sending good thoughts to you and in the high retreat.
Nice.
Nice. I am not up to anything particularly outside of just sitting. I do have the potential of teaching first responders mindfulness in Crestone in January. And I have some mixed feelings about it because I guess not only are they first responders, but most of them are law enforcement. So there's a bit of like, oh, hey, yes, I need to teach you how not to shoot people. How to not overreact when you see someone. So, but I mean, the work that I would be doing on myself is kind of interesting because I would have to kind of deal with what it takes to instruct law enforcement on being mindful. And so because I'm bona fide and certified with Tara Brock and Jack Cornfield to teach mindfulness after that 2-year program, I know a thing or two about a thing or two, but it is going to be interesting to not be in my stuff about, oh, this is a person who has a license to kill.
Right.
I mean,
Better watch my speed when I'm leaving this retreat.
yes, right. So I come unarmed. It's going to be so hard not to joke. It is going to be so hard not to be. I'll have to put. I want to be real and I want to be honest. But I mean, I'm going to want to probably take the piss a little bit and be like, so learning mindfulness. Anyone here kill anyone? Is this thing on?
I think
Maybe not opener, but
right. I don't. Yeah. So, but I mean, I think they are going to be law enforcement from around the country. I'm imagining more than a few are going to be from Colorado, where we're located. But which Colorado law enforcement has had a few things go down of late when it comes to that. But I mean, teaching mindfulness and meditation and all of the techniques for being present is going to be interesting because they see the need. They obviously see the need to do it, and to undertake that work. It's just going to be interesting to deal with what their motivations are, what my motivations are, what they would need. Are they hoping to work on de-escalation techniques by being mindful, or to work on not being anxious by being more mindful? It'll be interesting. But there's a gentleman, Rich, who invited me to do this, and he's with Mindful Badge. You can check that out online, and he's been doing it for a while. But I met him years ago when I was thinking about doing my practicum on teaching mindfulness to law enforcement. So that's what I may be up to. How about you, Matt? Matt, my co-creator of That's So Quantum. What wacky esoteric things are you going to be up to in the coming weeks, days, months?
I think. Oh, I have
And it
nothing
doesn't.
planned.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah,
You're
it's kind of
enlightened.
it's the natural state,
Right.
apparently.
Just
Um,
sitting daily,
yeah,
watching.
it's like basically my practice has evolved over time, but it's always kind of been sitting. I guess you'd call vipassana, but I learned it early as a child from being in church and such. It's like prayer is sitting, everything is sitting if you're sitting.
Yeah, it can all
And
be
then
sort of feed into that.
yeah, and sitting zazen and sitting vipassana, where you just watch the breath, watch the thoughts arise, and it's been an interesting ride because it does add up. It is cumulative.
Well, and
It
I think,
actually is, and
and
it's
that's the
fun.
that's the thing about all this work, is it's all cumulative. You know, I
Yes.
think people think, oh, I'm not good at meditation. It's like, no, you're perfect at meditation straight
You
out the gate.
become better at meditation over time, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh, well, where you started and where you end up is a journey.
It's just, you know, watching. I think people think of meditation probably more like Hindu meditation, where you're trying to achieve a state of
Mhm.
bliss, or you know, Sat
Mhm.
Chitananda, that sort of bliss and knowledge and realization and peace. Whereas in Vipassana and the Buddhist forms of meditation, you're just using the peace as a vehicle to see.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Yeah,
so
it's the states will come and go. That's not really the goal necessarily, or
no,
the
it's
seeing.
not the point. Not the point. Well,
Yeah,
so we're all
you know,
doing a
it's
thing.
yeah. You find a way if you have the time. You make the time, and you
I
know,
Doing
like
a thing.
it's. I think a lot of people feel like that these days. It's hard to the rat race and feel okay.
Sure. And I think that everything in our society at this point is trying to tell us, oh, just buy stuff. You'll be
Yeah.
fine. No, you didn't buy the right amount of stuff. You got to buy more stuff.
Next time it'll be different.
It for sure. Next time,
Yeah.
that that 2022 car isn't good enough. You got to get the 2024 car. Have you seen people drive around in Cybertrucks yet? I had my
Just
first.
one.
there's a few here. It's awful. Like
So
from some bad sci-fi.
right, it's very
Like,
ugly.
we
It's a
made it out of
very
cardboard and tinfoil. It's amazing.
it's it's such an ugly vehicle. It really
Really.
is. Yeah, but I mean, is that supposed to be sort of a materialistic flex, the Cybertruck? Like, I have enough money to buy this thing that looks like a silver box. Is it it's supposed to be kind of a materialistic flex? I've only seen one. I have to admit, I've only seen one. I've seen plenty of Teslas, but I've only seen one. And you know, if I was to own it, I would have to put some crazy bumper stickers on it to be counter programming to what the whole thing was. But they're always clean, and they're just this metal box driving across the land. That I guess are they bulletproof? I mean, this is a digression, I know, but
They said all those things about them, and then they proceeded to like break the windows accidentally.
I tried to roll down the window and it broke.
I mean, you know, the theory, I mean, the reason behind its like box shape is because it's made out of the same stuff as the rockets.
Ah,
Just
so
be
it's
like,
rocket
oh,
envy.
it's all rocket envy. Yes. To feel like you're driving around Mars or something.
Yeah, you're Space 1999. So it's rocket envy. Okay, well there you go.
These earthlings are fascinating.
Well, and this segues into the point of this podcast. So, or this video podcast, however you out there in the world of the internet are listening to this. I probably will edit it for sure and put it on YouTube. But the point was we wanted to have just a conversation about things that point to the transcendent, point to something beyond the sort of regular workaday world, and have it be an online space. Because I mean, a lot of online space is sort of materialistic, and you know, there's a place for the material world, obviously, but it is sort of the inundated with that. YouTube and social media are inundated with all of the things telling you to buy this or like that or hate this person or all of that stuff. And this is the Esoteric Lounge, is where we sort of relax like a lounge and kind of hash out some of the things that are not that. And we all have various levels of experience and relationships to things that are not that. And so I grabbed two friends to force them to have a conversation with me about all of these things that are esoteric. And so I just, this first episode, inaugural episode of the Esoteric Lounge, just what do you think was the first thing that sort of, and this is a question to both of you, all of us, what was the thing that brought you to thinking about things aside from sort of the nature of material, the regular quote unquote world, the rational world, the 9 to 5, 40-hour work week world? What was the thing that brought you to a desire to look for something else or see something else? You want to go first? That's a loaded question, right, Joseph? You can answer that in 5 minutes.
I can answer it with one word. Mushrooms.
Strangely enough, I actually that is probably my answer
Maybe it
too.
was LSD. I'm not sure.
Yeah, the role of psychedelics does sort of play a role in these things because I think you're a teenager trying to find stuff out and someone says, hey, take this, and you're like, sure, because your frontal lobe isn't completely developed, and you're like, fine, why not? And then you enter into a world that is a little bit different. It's like, I think the first thing I discovered on my first sort of journey was, oh, trees are actually living creatures. That's a living thing right there. Of course, it's all colorful and wavy and doing all of the things, but it's like you don't really think of that. At least I didn't think of them as being a living entity. That this world was life, all of these different manifestations and myriad forms of life. I think that having been raised in the church, I just was like, yeah, all that stuff is for our use. It wasn't like, oh no, it's that tree is its own thing with its own reality and its own age and its own consciousness. And I think that first sort of journey sort of cracked the door to kind of go, oh, that's, just wake up, go to school, get a good job, marry, have children, die. There's a lot of things in between there and through there. And yeah, seeing that tree was just like, oh, that's, and I'm connected to it because it's spitting out the thing that I need to be alive. And you learn that in what, probably elementary school, that trees, give oxygen, we give them CO2.
Yeah.
Um,
Basics.
yeah, right. But you don't think about, it's like, no, that living thing that's probably 80, 100 years old is doing the thing that you are connected to, that interconnected nature of reality. And it's not unfortunate that many of us first experienced that interconnectedness through a hallucinogenic journey, but it definitely was for me. So, but you were saying that was for you, Joseph, as well, you think? Something?
Well, I mean, I lived in the country and we certainly weren't setting out to like do something therapeutic. We were setting out to have a good time. And yeah, just like I had no way around feeling connected to everything around me. And yeah, being both very aware and feeling also my belonging in this crazy circus of the world, this universe that we're part of that is so profound.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a very gratifying experience for me at a time in my life where I was quite challenged.
If I
Coming
may
into,
ask, how old were you?
I was 14.
Ooh, that's early.
Down,
I think for me it
down.
was 19.
Yeah, I mean, I had been kind of an outcast kid, and I'd started to find some new peers that seemed to enjoy me, even though they teased me about the part in my hair or something like that.
Sure.
Brush your
Age
hair that way.
appropriate teasing.
Yeah.
It's like
And
sort of the hazing that happens with when you find your friend group.
Yeah, and then doing that, I found like this resolute, connected, calm confidence that I'd never experienced before. And I feel that sometimes in meditation too, like that feeling of just deep grounded knowing of like I'm part of something and I belong and everything's as it should be. All right.
Yeah, well, and that interconnectedness, I mean, I think that for me, just to go a little bit deeper, just for a split second, and then
Please.
I'd like to hear Matt talk as well. Uh, so I was raised in the sort of Black Baptist tradition, and that is a different form of Christianity, I think, than sort of some of the more mainstream fundamentalist stuff that we see now. I mean, it's pretty liberal politically. But there still is a side that seems to hold on to some sort of earth-based shamanic piece. Like if you catch the Holy Spirit and you just start shaking and jumping and, all of that. There was maybe some side groups that were into speaking in tongues, mistranslation of that particular version of the text. But, it was an ecstatic sort of religious experience, like bhakti yoga in Hinduism, which is devotional yoga, sort of, chanting the names of God. And it was that kind of flavor. But there was a lot of contradictions. And there was no dealing with the psychological piece at all, or your hurt or your shadow. And so at some point, I just being a depressed weirdo misfit with my other friends that were arguably in the same place, that a friend proposed that I do that. And it was the day before Easter in 1989. Day before Easter, peaked midnight on Easter. So, of course, all of the religious imagery, all of the spiritual stuff. And, most of it, I spent crying my eyeballs out, feeling this place of, oh, I didn't love myself. I hadn't found a love for myself yet. And all this stuff about my father and parents and peers, and just having this deep, profound lack of self-esteem. And it just cracked like an egg. It just cracked. And it was off to the races after that, I think, because it was so spiritual and so transformative that there was nothing I could do but follow the breadcrumbs that it left, which was, oh, there's this thing called Buddhism, and there's this thing called mysticism, and there's these things called sweat lodges, and peyote ceremonies, and there's this book, Be Here Now, and I followed it, and always trusted that, I think. And I don't think I ever, since that moment, ever had a profoundly lack of self-esteem piece of my life. Like, I definitely have been depressed and had depression and all of the things, but in terms of self-loathing, that just never really returned. It's just like, oh, maybe life sucks, but it wasn't like I suck. You know what I mean? It was like, oh, and that was just maybe my perceptions were the thing that sucked. And so that was what brought me to the esoteric. So, Matthew, how about you?
Well, it's pretty similar to both of you guys in a lot of ways, where it's I was brought up in the Catholic Church, like probably kind of it sounds kind of similarly to you, where it's like it's very devotional. It's kind of like a devotional practice, and if you know where to look for it, you can get a little bit of mysticism in there, and it kind of like it's like okay, you're like uh, kind of denial of the self as an individual is kind of like a little bit of the goal of devotion. Is like you kind of forget yourself and become part of everything. And then also just like I grew up in the desert in California. It's like you're just in nature. And it's like sometimes you get little glimpses where you catch yourself not thinking and just being. present. And then I came from under with your help. And it's like, oh, here's the Bhagavad Gita, here's all the things. And then it's, you kind of just your practice just kind of grows and you start following those breadcrumbs kind of thing. This is a really good metaphor.
Yeah, so the Bhagavad Gita, you think? Oh my God.
It's
so good though.
Yeah, it is incredible. And it's like as your perspective from your practice changes, the things you have absorbed kind of like your understanding of those things start to change a little bit. Like, oh, they might have been like referring to this like slightly deeper layer, and then the layers keep going down, it's kind of just as it unfolds.
Well, it's like when people talk about thou shalt not kill, it's like, oh, that's just my tribe, or that's just my countrymen. And then it gets,
it's like,
that's maybe all human beings. And then it's like, oh, maybe it's all living conscious things.
Mm-hmm.
And so it just gets broader and deeper at the same time.
Yeah, it was very interesting. And I think, a lot of people can get those glimpses occasionally. And sometimes it's not a good glimpse. It's like you're in like extreme pain or trauma, or like somebody died, or like but you still get those glimpses where like it just shuts off for a second. And you're like, oh, well, what was that? You notice it. And then if you begin to inquire into it, hopefully you can find people that can teach you some of that stuff. Sit in meditation or do mantras or prayer, or yoga. All that stuff combines together and can, kind of help you along.
I think that's an important point, is the role of the teacher. And the teacher isn't necessarily an overt thing. Sometimes it's like, hello, I am your teacher. And you go and he's got the special robes and he's got all the titles. But a lot of times it's just an older person that you meet that's like, hey, check this book out. Or, hey, maybe go here. That kind of thing. For Joseph and I at the Lama Foundation, Rahman for sure was a person like that. And I name checked him fairly recently when I was teaching a teen retreat at the Lama Foundation in New Mexico. Ladies and gentlemen, check out the Lama Foundation if you can. It's a definitely worthwhile journey. But yeah, and he was just an old British guy who happened to, speaking of which, he happened to be part of the Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh. He was so that wild country.
Wow, that's crazy.
Anytime I try to look at that Netflix documentary Wild Country, I think it's called.
Yeah, it's Wild Country.
Yeah, I try and look. I'm like, there's got to be Rahman somewhere.
Yeah, I know a couple people from those circles.
Oh, have you seen anybody in Wild Country?
No, I haven't, but it's I wouldn't be surprised. But people of course look so different now. Like I'm talking about people that are now in their 60s and 70s.
Yeah, they were 20 something then, or maybe, Yeah, I always try and look and say, man, I would love to see Rahman doing something. And that was an interesting group. I think, the role of a teacher, he was, I think, a decent teacher. They took some different roads, some different avenues, but the teaching, I think, trying to be sort of ecumenical, like, oh, let's bring in the Bhagavad Gita, let's bring in the teachings of Christ, let's bring in meditation, let's bring in chanting, I think was admirable. I need to finish Wild Country. I think I've only seen the first 2 episodes, and it was when it first came out a few years ago. But like I said, I'm always like, where's Rahman? I gotta see. So I'm probably missing the entire point. It sounds, so there were people at the Lama Foundation, Matt, that we met that were involved with a lot of that stuff, that had been in and out of different communities that were about practice. Because there was this great flowering in the 60s, the baby boomers, that for all of their faults or strengths, the baby boomers at the very least were curious enough to really bring in Eastern teachings and have it be looked at, because I think that even though the beatniks in the 50s had
Mhm.
Suzuki Roshi and all those
Yeah,
folks come
well, and
in.
it seems like a lot of that was like a result of the first couple of decades of the 20th century, where it's like you finally get those,
Yeah,
Suzuki coming from Japan being printed over here in English
yeah.
for like the first time. And then it's like, oh, when you hit the 60s, you got a couple editions, you got like,
You got Chogyam
probably.
Trungpa coming through, so the Tibetan Buddhism thing came through in the 60s. Yeah. Mayor Baba and Sri Ramana Maharshi. You got a lot of that stuff, even though it was, like you said, flowering in the early part of the 20th century.
Yeah, I think the result of the global war kind of like, it's like,
Yeah.
okay, now we have global commerce because we just spent the past 5 or 6 years killing each other.
Obliterating each other. Yeah, I never
So it's
thought of
like,
it that
well,
way.
the technology advanced really fast, globally. So it's like, well, good, bad,
Sure.
I guess.
A global world. I never thought of it as the World War II was sort of this weird genesis of that, but it's true, because after the war, that World War II generation got to having kids.
Mhm. And you
They,
had
a lot of kids, and then you had the
and
baby
you
boomers.
and you had your material needs covered for
Yeah,
those kids,
yeah, and that
and
was the
they
birth.
could go to college. They could go exploring for a bit. They didn't have to buckle down.
They didn't have to,
They had
yeah,
a
work in a mill or anything like that.
yeah. You know, everyone's got to work, but it wasn't
It
quite the
wasn't.
same world.
No. So they come back after World War II, have a buttload of kids, which become the baby boomers. And the baby boomers very quickly, when they become teenagers, sort of create the whole rock and roll phenomena, right? I mean, it was a little, 50s. So they
Yeah.
were 50s. I definitely by the 60s they were exploring that rock and roll thing. And then that's when you had when I wouldn't I guess LSD for Hoffman was what, 59? Birth control pills somewhere in there too.
Hmm.
So they were a little bit less tied to having to have children. Um and having sex only to have children, so they
Hmm.
could not get married. Some of us are the fallout of some of that stuff. Generation X experienced with
Yeah.
the high divorces, but yeah,
Yeah.
I never had thought about it. Yeah, that was that explosion, not only with the atom bomb, but with the baby boom, is a large part of the reason why we have some of those teachings.
Yeah. So I guess great.
Only
uh
72 million people died, but hey, we
yeah,
can read the
well,
Bhagavad Gita now in English. It's true. Wasn't Thoreau into the Bhagavad Gita though? So I mean, there were hints of it earlier, but it didn't
yeah, I
reach
would assume.
mass acceptance till then. Hmm. Yeah, there was a lot of. I mean, Joseph, wouldn't you say there was a lot of baby boomer energy at the Lama Foundation to some degree?
There was, and I just think about it's a lot about exposure and also having the abundance culturally to actually go and explore these things. Like they weren't doing that during the war, and they were like everyone had to buckle down.
Yeah. So it's almost like you have to have leisure time.
Yeah, no way. I think you do have to have leisure time to be able to really truly go off in a direction. I mean, like I said earlier, I started all this during my teens, and I figured out ways to have leisure time. But as an adult, um, if you're in a culture where you need to work, yeah, you're not going to be able to go as deep.
No.
Of course, I mean, we all do, and you're a great example of someone who works his ass off and still manages to explore all
Sneak it
kinds of
in.
avenues. Yeah,
Sneak it in here and there.
Yeah,
Uh
just wherever you can.
wherever you can. But it's true though. It's like I think that's why the 20s are so fertile, because I think when you're in your 20s, as long as you don't have children, you can stretch out a bit, and you can you're already trying to distance yourself psychologically, emotionally, and sometimes physically from your parents. And then it's that time to stretch out and reach out and experience things. And for me, like, Christianity was very explicit. It's like, no, this is the answer. Don't look anywhere else. And so just taking that first step of maybe there's something else was the biggest hurdle. Once that happened, it was like, oh, it's like the same kind of thing when people say all drugs are bad. And then you have your first experience with cannabis or a hallucinogen. You're like, maybe shenanigans on some of that stuff.
Maybe they lied a little bit.
Maybe they lied a little bit. Maybe they weren't
Maybe
true
they're
there.
scooching the goalposts. Yeah,
Well,
but it's, you know, it's a perspective thing in a lot of ways, and it seems like that's kind of where we're headed.
so now that they're starting to have mushrooms be legal, it's legal here in Colorado to have them. I just feel like, how are they gonna? I see how they've already sort of made cannabis. They've commodified it. They've sort of allowed. How do you commodify
a thing that destroys materialism?
Yeah, because you can't. You can
because, which is very funny. Its desperate need to be accepted will destroy itself.
Maybe. I mean, I feel like, early days of cannabis, many people that you would meet were already destroying some of that sort of that paradigm. But you could very easily just poke smot and never challenge the status quo. You just it could be just very parallel to alcohol. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, I called it poking smot because I think it's funny to say that. But I don't know how you do that with hallucinogens, really. What do you think, Joseph?
Well, there are multiple states now where it is for sale. Like Oregon is the one I know of for sure, and I think Massachusetts or someplace like that.
Really? Boston? Boston's gonna have
Somebody
shrooms
told
be
me that
legal?
we're somewhere back east, and I think they said Massachusetts, and they were like, yeah, and I bought mushroom chocolates. This seems to be the thing now. Mushroom chocolates. Everyone wants something in a really palatable form. It's like,
right?
Just something you
Well,
can just.
Boston could use it, frankly.
They could use a win.
That's probably a win.
They could use more mushrooms distributed throughout their population.
Oregon, they've already, that's too close to Portland. Well, Portland's in Oregon, but that's too close to already getting it. But Boston,
Formerly home to KKK, so.
Oh, that's true.
There's a lot of people in Oregon that could use some exposure.
Yeah, that's true. Is that Oregon? There's two sides to Oregon and Idaho and all that, in Montana. There's that sort of white supremacist side and the side that's like Portlandia,
Yeah, it is interesting with psychedelics how some people manage to like turn them into party drugs and others can't help but have like mystical experiences on them. And of course, dosage is a big piece of all that, and setting. And
sure. Like Terrence McKenna and the heroic dose. You were going to say something, Matt?
Oh, I was thinking that's very apt. Like, it is very like Yoda and Luke, like what you take with you into the tree, it's going to be what you take with you into the tree.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a perspective thing. It's like if you're trying to, have a good time, hopefully you're in a good setting and you have a good time. But, you can do other things too.
It's true. I suppose once upon a time in Colorado, remember the mall crawl? I don't know if it was before your time, Matt, but years and years ago in Colorado, in Boulder, they had the Boulder Mall Crawl. So everybody just got blasted and would walk down Pearl Street. And they eventually got rid of it because it got unruly, because there was a bunch of people that were doing shrooms, bunch of people on acid, bunch of people on coke, bunch of people drinking, and it just was bananas.
Yeah.
It had ended shortly. I think the last year of it was probably the first year of me being in college at CSU.
Yeah.
So it was eliminated. It was done by 89, 88.
Yeah, I wasn't quite there yet.
Interesting you say that. I remember being in the early 90s and not experiencing that, but feeling like Pearl Street still had this like cosmic vibe somehow. And now I go and I'm like, this place has 0 vibe.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
it's all
Boulder.
Teslas
Poor
and
vibe.
Starbucks.
Yeah, Boulder, the Boulder of the People's Republic of Boulder, that's gone, probably. I mean, it's leftist, but in the shittiest version of that, which is that, yeah, we're gonna talk about recycling and diversity and everything else, but we're gonna be super materialistic anyway. You used to be able to there was like head shops on Pearl
Mm-hmm.
Street. They used to have the Beat bookstore. I used to, when I was in high school, drive up to Boulder and get some Kerouac and some, read all the beatniks and stuff. I think that Beat bookstore is long gone. But yeah, the last time I was at Pearl Street, I was like, this is almost unrecognizable. And I don't have enough money or enough cool to be here. I'm not nearly cool enough to be there. But that's sad because so it can be commodified. Consciousness, the esoteric, can be commodified, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I think it would be hard with mushrooms. I think the way that they're wanting to do it in Colorado, and I don't know if you know about this, Joseph, being in New Mexico, but in Colorado, the way they've structured the law is they're going to come out with centers where you have to go to do it. So they're keeping it, I think, very therapeutic.
Yeah.
Or they're not, I mean, you can have them, but in terms of being able to do them in public, I think they're setting up centers or researching. We're researching the centers to then make the centers.
Yeah.
To do
Well, that
it.
is what most people who are body mushrooms these days are actually putting out there, is like the therapeutic uses of it versus the recreational uses for it. And I think it's amazing to see that expand. I mean, I still have some curiosity about this thing. I've looked up how they do this, and I'm like, and you get some headphones and a playlist and some like, okay,
all right.
that's what makes it therapeutic. Okay,
That's whatever. Yeah, I mean, I was absolutely unskilled during my first journey, and it just, I think being spiritually inclined and poetically inclined, beatnik adjacent, hippie adjacent, when I was in late high school, early college, I guess I was probably the set was already going that direction. It wasn't so much of like, yeah, I'm gonna go to see Pink Floyd, Laser Floyd, and takes Laser Zeppelin, go to the planetarium. It wasn't that, But yeah, I mean, whatever makes it therapeutic, if they stick to that, I think it'll be fine because, MAPS, the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies, if I've got the acronym right, they've said that it's one of the best things for PTSD people, like people, they have that dose, or people who are in cancer, stage 4 cancer, they have their dose, they have a therapeutic setting, and then they just feel better, and not feel better in the way that it's like, we're going to have to sell this to you at 30 milligrams with 30 pills every month. Just kind of one and done, not quite one and done, but pretty close, with having to re-up every now and then. But if it stays in that place, then it'll be good. It won't be just a mushroom dispensary on every corner.
Yeah, the Blade Runner version of get your food pellet in your pill.
Sure, Soma in the
Yeah.
island or Brave New World. So
in Vegas, that's like a giant laserium.
Oh God, I can't even imagine having a hallucinogen in Las Vegas. That town, side note for ladies and gentlemen, been there, smells real bad. And it's just a hyper materialistic playground. So I would have a bad time. I probably
have a good time.
Yes.
A really surreal time. You're like, wow, this shit's crazy.
You really feel like you were like in a Fellini film.
Yeah.
You'd be like, "Oh my God, this is bananas." Yeah, it'd be like, "Please turn the volume down."
Mm.
Yeah, but so you think, Joseph, it's Oregon? I know it's Colorado, probably California has something that
Um,
they're making for that.
I'm gonna do a little
Oh, you're gonna
tech,
do a little research for us while we're on the pod.
little mushrooms.
Um,
Or,
I did see a place near me in Arvada that was selling grow kits, so apparently those are legal too, and they had the syringes for it
Hmm.
as well. And yeah, that's gonna bring people to the esoteric. Uh-oh, doggy. My dog probably could stand to accidentally find psilocybin mushrooms. No. No, I would never do
Hmm.
that, ladies and gentlemen. I promise. But he does bark a lot.
Hmm.
He just needs to. They do have cannabis thingies for him, though. He seems to do well with those. Pet cannabis. So have you found anything, Joseph?
well, this is a confusing site because it's mentioning lots of bills and possibilities, but they're talking about California, Arizona, Hawaii, Maine.
Arizona.
But I think no, actual decriminalization is, oh no, these are still works in progress.
Okay, but there's it's in the pipeline. It's in the zeitgeist.
It's all over. I mean, I would say across the country, it's following the same tracking as marijuana did, where it just like popped up state to state to state to state.
Sure, pops up in our
Currently,
hip state first, Colorado and
currently,
California.
state by state, it looks like Oregon and Colorado are the only states where it's like a go. And then there's all these other like cities and places all over California and the East Coast, predictably.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that checks out.
it's like somewhere up in like the UP or something. I don't know.
Probably not Alabama.
It's happening in the green, in the blue states.
It's happening in the blue states. Probably not Alabama, which, my lord, they really could use that, I think. Um, you know, but it's, whatever practice that can find you not feeling separate, and not feeling disconnected. We're in an election season, and so everybody's playing with tribalism and are you on the good guy's side or are you on the bad guy's side and all of that. And it's going to get, I'm sure, plenty worse before it gets better. But we at the Esoteric Lounge are here for you.
5 more weeks.
Oh God. Five more weeks for the election. It's really going to be quite nightmarish. I'm keeping my head down. I'm glad in Colorado we get mail-in ballots. Do you get mail-in ballots in New Mexico? Or do you have to go someplace?
You can request them, you get them automatically.
You broke up there. You were.
I was just saying, I think you can request them, but I don't think you get them automatically. You don't get them automatically. You have to.
Okay. Here we get them automatically
They
because
make it
Colorado.
really easy with early voting. I mean, there's tons of places to vote here where you can go off and take your
And do
pick.
that.
And I'm not voting this year.
Oh, look at you, you transgressive person. I'm gonna vote. I do. I feel like it. I did think about it quite a bit because I mean I'm sort of a card carrying socialist, anarchist, democratic socialist. I mean, I'm never gonna have someone that I would be like,
But you
that's
have
my
to
guy.
vote.
That's there's never gonna be that's my guy. But I can get at least a couple lanes close by voting. So I'll vote. I understand the desire not to though, especially, it do you feel like it's participating in a system that is beneath you, like it's just become so evil and debased that it's hard to rationalize it?
It's such a dysfunctional system, and it's not really based on the candidate.
it's
Um,
it's much more it
it's
is a little
so
bit of a
based on it's so
popularity
based on
contest.
who has the money, and the whole system is just so dysfunctional that it's like, it just feels like voting for people on a reality television show or something. That like it seems to have very little relevance to what actually happens, who wins.
Well,
Does-
and I
I mean,
know
I'm
people.
not saying it doesn't matter at all. Like there is the possibility, but people make it so high stakes, and
Yeah.
some pretty terrible things did happen during the Orangeness's last reign. But what is he going to do now?
Oh God. Yeah.
And
I tell you what, considering Colorado wanted to kick him off the ballot, I guarantee you he'd send the friggin' DEA on us and say it's not federally legal, so you're all arrested.
Right.
He seems kind of a vengeful fellow.
Yeah.
Speaking of disconnected, not feeling the interconnectedness of all reality, that seems to be the case for that fellow. I get it. I definitely do. I feel like local elections matter much
Yes.
more.
Yes.
Um, and I
Absolutely.
think they will always matter more because I think that like Colorado is kind of doing its own thing. And even though it's blue, it's really trying to do whatever it needs to within itself. And America's just too big, I think, for one state to decide what another state should be able to do. I mean, I don't want Alabama and Mississippi telling me in Colorado what I need to do. But we have this federal system, and an Alabama and a Mississippi have more electoral votes than a Colorado by itself. So,
Yeah.
it's tough. It's tough. But that is a political podcast. This is an esoteric podcast. So we're going to deal with the other reality, the super reality, the mega reality, the esoteric reality. So I know that Joseph, you have to leave and cut out.
I do.
But this is our inaugural episode. I would love to do this with you guys
Yeah.
every couple weeks if you want.
Do it.
And today was just saying, hey, this is what brought us to this, which it seems like mushrooms, religion, other mystical sides to religion. And we'll discuss, I think, a lot of different things, like what is the nature of identity and ego? What is the relationship to money and the spiritual path? What practices have we found that are useful? What books are we finding that are useful? So I think I'd like this to be a good resource, and plus I get to hang out with my two buddies, to talk about all this stuff that is really meaningful. So, but that was the first episode of the Esoteric Lounge. Join us periodically in the YouTube space, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.
All right.
Thank you.